Most people approach a career move the same way. Something becomes uncomfortable enough, they update their resume. They interview somewhere new, they take the offer that feels like an improvement, and they move. 6 months later, a quiet version of the same dissatisfaction starts to surface. Different company, different title, same feeling. The problem wasn't the job they left. The problem was that they never clearly understood why they were leaving, or what they were actually looking for when they got there. The real question most people never ask. When you're thinking about changing jobs, the question most people ask is, what would be better than this? More money, better culture, a different manager, a shorter commute. These are real considerations, but they're surface-level answers to a much deeper question that most people skip entirely. The deeper question is this: what do I actually need my career to do for my life right now? Not in general, not eventually. Right now, at this specific point, given what's happening in your life and what you're trying to build. Behavioral researchers who study career transitions have identified something consistent across thousands of job changes. The people who end up satisfied with a move are not necessarily the ones who found a better job. They're the ones who understood what they were actually hiring a job to do, and then found one that could do it. Reason 1. Most people leave for the wrong reasons. Career researchers studying why people change jobs have identified 4 distinct patterns. Some people are moving towards something. They're satisfied where they are, but want a bigger challenge, more growth, a higher ceiling. Some are escaping something, a bad manager, a toxic culture, a situation that's become genuinely unsustainable. Some are being pushed out involuntarily, restructuring, layoffs, circumstances outside their control. And some are starting over, a fundamental shift in direction, not just an upgrade. These 4 situations look similar from the outside. They all result in someone changing jobs, but they require completely different strategies, and they carry completely different risks. The most dangerous of the 4 is the escape, and it's by far the most common. When you're escaping, the pain of where you are becomes so loud that it drowns out everything else. You're not thinking clearly about where you're going, you're thinking about getting out. And the psychological research on this is unambiguous. Decisions made primarily to escape negative situations rather than to move toward positive ones produce systematically worse outcomes. Not because the new situation is worse on paper, because you arrived without a clear picture of what you actually needed. And without that clarity, the new environment fills in with whatever it wants. Psychologists call this negative reinforcement bias, the tendency to weight the removal of pain far more heavily than the acquisition of gain when making decisions. It produces short-term relief and long-term repetition of the same pattern. Reason 2. You're optimizing for the wrong variables. Here's a question worth sitting with. When you imagine a better job, what specifically are you imagining? Most people answer with a list of external conditions: higher salary, better title, more flexibility, a company people have heard of. These variables are real, they matter, but they're frequently not what actually determines whether someone feels satisfied in their work 12 months after starting. The research on workplace satisfaction consistently points to a different set of drivers: autonomy over how work gets done, a sense of meaningful progress, genuine competence in the work itself, and relationships that feel substantive rather than transactional. These are internal experience variables, not external condition variables, and they correlate far more reliably with long-term job satisfaction than the factors most people optimize for when choosing a new role. The practical implication is uncomfortable. You can get everything on your list, the salary, the title, the flexibility, and still arrive at the same quiet dissatisfaction 3 months later, because what you listed wasn't actually what you needed. It was what you thought you needed, assembled from what was most legible and most comparable to what you already had. Reason 3. Push without pull leads back to the same place. There are 2 forces operating in every career decision: the push, the discomfort, frustration, or pain that makes leaving feel necessary; the pull, the specific, genuine appeal of where you're going. Most people who are unhappy in a role have very strong push. They can list in detail everything that's wrong with where they are. But when asked what specifically pulls them toward the new opportunity, the answer is frequently vague. It seems better, the culture feels different, I think I'd have more room to grow. Vague pull under pressure collapses. The push stops the moment you leave, and what you're left with is an environment you don't fully understand, built on expectations you didn't examine carefully enough. The people who transition most successfully into new roles tend to have a specific, detailed picture of what they need the new role to provide, not just what it offers on paper, but what gap in their working life it's meant to fill. That specificity is not a small thing. It's the difference between a deliberate move and a managed escape. What actually works? The experimental approach. One of the most consistent findings in career research is that people dramatically overestimate their ability to predict what they'll enjoy and find meaningful before they've actually experienced it. We are not reliable forecasters of our own future satisfaction. We think we know what we want. We're frequently wrong in ways we couldn't have anticipated. This suggests a different approach to career decisions than the one most people take. Rather than searching for the perfect role, the one role that solves everything, a more effective strategy involves treating career transitions as a series of smaller experiments, each designed to test a specific hypothesis about what you need from your work. A small experiment might mean taking on a project outside your current role to test whether a different type of work actually energizes you the way you imagine it will. It might mean a structured informational conversation, not to network, but to genuinely interrogate your assumptions about what a different environment would feel like from the inside. It might mean identifying one specific thing you're missing in your current role and finding out whether that specific thing actually exists in the role you're considering, not as described in a job posting, but as experienced by the people doing it. This approach works because it replaces speculation with data. You stop making large, high-stakes decisions based on what you think you want and start accumulating actual evidence about what works for you in practice. Before you update your resume, there's one question worth answering with real specificity. Not what would be better than this, but what does my life actually need from my work right now? And what's the most direct path to finding something that can genuinely provide it? That question is harder than it sounds. It requires you to be honest about whether you're moving towards something or escaping something. It requires you to separate the conditions that look appealing from the experience that will actually feel satisfying. And it requires you to hold your own predictions loosely enough to test them, rather than bet everything on them. The people who figure that out don't just find better jobs, they stop repeating the same move. If this reframed how you think about your next career decision, drop a comment below and join our community of people quietly making more deliberate choices about how they spend their working lives.